There's always a moment when Hollywood chooses its next golden boy, the actor who suddenly lands every major role. Right now, it's guys like Pedro Pascal and Timothée Chalamet, but not too long ago, Henry Cavill was on that list. From Superman to Mission Impossible, Sherlock Holmes to The Witcher, his rise looked unstoppable. He seemed to have it all: the chiseled jawline, the blockbuster body, and the rare crossover appeal that made both men and women root for him. People just couldn't get enough, and fans were even calling for him to be the next James Bond. However, somewhere along the way, his momentum began to fade. Cavill lost two of his biggest roles back to back, and the Bond dream quietly slipped away. Then he was painted as a misogynistic, toxic gamer bro, a label that for many tarnished his reputation. His recent projects, like Argyle and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, either flopped or failed to make an impact, and while there are still projects on the horizon, none carry the weight of the roles he lost. So what happened? How did one of the most bankable, beloved faces in Hollywood go from being everywhere to being sidelined? Before he made it big in Hollywood, Henry Cavill was just a shy kid from Jersey, one of the Channel Islands off the coast of France. He had aspirations of becoming a well-known actor from a young age, but his journey in the industry wasn't exactly straightforward. Cavill's early career was filled with close calls and what-ifs. He landed small roles in films like The Count of Monte Cristo, I Capture the Castle, and Hellraiser Hellworld, but none really put him on the map. He was working, but never quite breaking through. Then the near misses started piling up. In 2005, he was one of the final two contenders for the role of James Bond in Casino Royale.
Vodka martini shaken up today. And you?
The same, thank you. Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
In the end, producers felt he was too young at just 22 years old, and they gave the role to Daniel Craig instead. Then came an even more painful miss. Cavill was actually cast as Superman in McGee's planned reboot, but when that director dropped out and Bryan Singer took over, he chose Brandon Routh to play the role instead. Cavill had grown up idolizing Superman, so to get so close only to lose the role crushed him, and his string of bad luck didn't stop there. Stephenie Meyer, the author of Twilight, openly declared that Cavill was her perfect Edward Cullen, but by the time the film went into production, he was deemed too old to play a teenage vampire, and the role, along with the global stardom, went to Robert Pattinson. This stung twice as much because he'd already been beaten by Pattinson once before, for the role of Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. The rejections piled up so consistently that Cavill began to wonder if his big break would ever come. He was the guy who always came in second, watching from the sidelines as other actors launched into superstardom with roles that could have been his. His streak of near misses earned him the nickname the Unluckiest Man in Hollywood in the press. But Cavill's luck began to shift in 2007, when he landed the role of Charles Brandon in Showtime's historical drama The Tudors. It wasn't a blockbuster or high-profile franchise, but the show built a loyal following, and for the first time, Cavill had a character he could develop over multiple seasons. He played King Henry VIII's close friend and brother-in-law, displaying the mix of charm, stoicism, and quiet intensity that would go on to become his trademark. The Tudors gave Cavill his first breakout role on television, but he was still far from a household name. He continued booking roles, including the lead in the movie Immortals, where he got in really impressive shape, but true stardom still remained out of reach. Then, in January 2011, everything changed. After years of near misses and frustration, Cavill was announced as the new Superman in Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. At 27, he'd finally landed the role that had once slipped through his fingers. Funnily, he actually missed the call from Snyder because he was in the middle of a World of Warcraft session farming boars.
You nearly lost quite an important job.
Absolutely, yeah. I was playing a game called World of Warcraft. And,
I've heard of all of them.
Yeah. And I missed the call from Zack Snyder to tell me I got Superman.
But like, did you hear the phone ringing?
I did.
And you chose to ignore it?
Absolutely. But I did call Zack back afterwards.
Oh yeah, that was wise.
Yeah.
To prepare for the role, Cavill dedicated himself to a punishing training program. He worked with the renowned strength coach Mark Twight, the man behind the intense physical transformations seen in the cast of 300.
Mark is probably one of the most incredible people I've met. He's opened my eyes to seeing past what I thought were my limits. Superman learned he could fly. I learned I could do all sorts of things in the gym which I never thought were possible. It's not just a physical thing, but a psychological thing as well.
Cavill gained over 20 pounds of muscle, achieving the kind of physique that most men dream of. And unlike many transformations in Hollywood, which are clearly assisted by PEDs, the consensus was that he'd done it naturally. But Henry didn't stop there. His dedication to the role extended beyond the gym. He immersed himself in Superman comics, studying the character's history and psychology to bring depth to his portrayal. And in June 2013, the movie finally hit screens.
You were once described as the unluckiest man in Hollywood because you came so close to all these roles. Do you feel like the luckiest tonight?
I do, I certainly do. And it's just amazing being here. We worked so hard telling this story, and I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Man of Steel was a commercial success, grossing around $670 million worldwide, and while the critical reception was mixed, Cavill's performance was widely praised. He brought the right mix of strength and sincerity to the character, making his portrayal feel fresh and modern. For Cavill, this role changed everything. The man who'd spent years coming second was suddenly front and center. Magazine covers, talk show appearances, and fan adoration all came at once. He'd finally caught a break, and he was determined to make the most of it. He went on to star in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice in 2016 and Justice League in 2017. These films received mixed to negative reviews, but Cavill's portrayal of Superman was rarely the problem. If anything, his performance was one of few things critics consistently praised. He spoke often about his desire to continue playing Superman for years to come, envisioning a series of films that would explore different aspects of the character. However, he wasn't content to be defined solely by one iconic role. Between DC films, he branched out, joining the cast of The Man from U.N.C.L.E. as spy Napoleon Solo, and stealing scenes in Mission Impossible Fallout as a CIA agent August Walker. However, his most significant post-Superman role was still to come. In 2018, he was cast as another iconic character, Geralt of Rivia in Netflix's adaptation of The Witcher. This role wasn't just another job for Cavill, it was a passion project. As a self-described nerd with a deep love for fantasy and gaming, he was already a fan of both the original books and the video games they inspired.
I have been a fan of the fantasy genre since I was a boy. My dad would read to me before I could read, and then any of my free time spent reading has always been, well, more often than not, has been reading fantasy genre. I'm a big PC gamer as well, and so I spent a lot of my time playing role-playing games in that genre and played the Witcher games. I played The Witcher 3 through twice.
He'd actively pursued the role, reaching out to Netflix and showrunner Lauren Hissrich multiple times before casting had even begun. His enthusiasm was impossible to ignore, and after taking a meeting with him, Hissrich made it official, tweeting, "He is Geralt, he always has been."
This is the kind of thing I do. This is the kind of thing I do in my free time. So the opportunity to work on this for real and make it my job as well, get paid for doing my hobby stuff, was ideal. And I just wanted to make sure that Geralt was represented as accurately as possible.
His passion for the material showed in every detail. From sword training to stunt work, Cavill pushed to do as much of it himself as possible. Being a devoted fan of the series, Cavill treated the character with a level of respect most actors wouldn't bother with. For fans, that's what made him so compelling. It felt like someone who truly cared had finally been trusted with the kind of franchise Hollywood usually butchered. At first, everything was going according to plan. The Witcher's debut season was a massive hit, pulling in huge viewership numbers and quickly becoming one of Netflix's most watched series. The showrunner had plans for a lengthy 7-season arc, and after the success of season 1, it genuinely looked possible. When asked in a 2021 interview if he was on board for the long haul, Cavill responded enthusiastically, saying, "Absolutely, as long as we can keep telling great stories which honor Sapkowski's work." But that's where things started to unravel. Despite early promises to remain faithful to the books, the writers began to take serious liberties with the source material by season 2. Characters were invented, lore was rewritten, and plotlines were added that had little to do with Sapkowski's original vision. Fans noticed, and Cavill noticed too. Behind the scenes, he reportedly pushed back hard. He urged the writing team to stay faithful to the world they'd promised to adapt, advocating for storylines that aligned more closely with the books.
I'm the most annoying guy on set because I'm saying, excuse me, you do realize that this should be happening and they wouldn't do that, and you haven't read this, that means this would be impossible. And everyone's just going, Henry, just shut up and do the thing. And I'm like, I don't want to do the thing because he wouldn't do it this way, and he can do this.
But the same qualities that once made him seem like the perfect man for the job, his passion, his deep knowledge, his devotion to the lore, suddenly made him look difficult. Over time, the narrative behind the scenes began to shift. What started as praise for his dedication became feelings that he was stubborn, rigid, or not collaborative. Still, Cavill remained dedicated to doing right by the character. When key scenes lacked emotional weight, he stepped in. One notable example was the death of Geralt's horse, Roach, in season 2, a moment Cavill felt deserved more respect. He added his own farewell to the scene on set, ensuring the character's bond with Roach was properly honored. But despite his best efforts, those heartfelt touches couldn't save the season as a whole. Audience satisfaction for Season 2 dropped off a cliff, with threads like, "The writing for The Witcher Season 2 is awful," gaining a huge amount of traction on Reddit. However, the viewership numbers for the season were still strong, so Netflix gave the green light to Season 3. Fans were holding out hope that they could turn things around, but during production for the season, Cavill made an announcement that changed everything. In October 2022, he revealed that he'd be leaving the show after the 3rd season, with Liam Hemsworth taking over the role of Geralt. The news was shocking, especially since Cavill had previously expressed his desire to play Geralt for 7 seasons. But soon enough, the reason for his exit became clear. Reports emerged explaining that he'd been very close to quitting after Season 2 due to constant disagreements with producers, but he decided to stick it out for one more season. During production for Season 3, the situation got even worse as the showrunners continued changing and adding storylines, and Cavill simply had enough. What had started as his dream job and passion project had turned into something he couldn't bear to be a part of. Cavill proved himself as a man of integrity. He won't ruin a character and franchise for a paycheck. He had the balls to just say no and walk away. Respect. The ratings for Season 3 speak volumes, as the audience score dropped to an abysmal 19%.
Coming out with this result is genuinely impressive, that The Witcher C's final 2 episodes are the lowest rated ever. This is a series that shouldn't be able to fail unless you are intentionally destroying the IP. And yet every time one of the staff gives an interview or the producer starts talking, everybody just starts shooting the IP in the face.
Shortly after Cavill announced his departure, former Witcher writer Beau DeMayo added fuel to the fire. In a viral Instagram comment, he wrote, "I've been on shows, namely Witcher, where some of the writers were not fans or actively disliked the books and games, even actively mocking the source material. It's a recipe for disaster and bad morale. Fandom as a litmus test checks egos and makes all the long nights worth it. You have to respect the work before you're allowed to add to its legacy." DeMayo's comment backed up what Cavill had been saying all along, and frustrated fans quickly turned their attention to showrunner Lauren Hissrich. She responded to the allegations saying, "I've never mocked the books. The books are my entire livelihood. I have a great relationship with Mr. Sapkowski. Don't believe everything you read." Just as the controversy around The Witcher was heating up, Cavill made another announcement, one that significantly shifted the conversation. Days after confirming his exit from the series, he revealed that he'd be returning as Superman. The news came shortly after a surprise cameo in Black Adam, which had fans buzzing about a full-blown comeback. Cavill confirmed it all on Instagram, clearly excited to be back in the cape.
I wanted to wait until the weekend was over before posting this, because I wanted to give you all a chance to watch Black Adam. But now that plenty of you have, I wanted to make it official that I am back as Superman. And the image you see on this post and what you saw in Black Adam are just a very small taste of things to come.
Many speculated that the Witcher exit was really about timing, that he couldn't commit to both roles and chose Superman instead. And from the outside, it looked like a smart move. Leave behind a project he no longer believed in to return to the one that made him a star. Maybe if the Superman role hadn't come through, he would have stuck it out with The Witcher, but it gave him the perfect reason to start fresh. However, things didn't end up going to plan. In December 2022, just weeks after Cavill's return was announced, Warner Brothers appointed James Gunn and Peter Safran as the new heads of DC Studios, and they had very different plans for the Man of Steel. Instead of continuing Cavill's version of the character, Gunn announced a full reboot of the franchise, starting with a younger Superman in a story focused on his early years. It was a complete shock to Cavill, but there was nothing he could do, and he posted another message online to fans, this time with much more somber news. "I will, after all, not be returning as Superman. After being told by the studio to announce my return back in October prior to their hire, this news isn't the easiest, but that's life." It was a bitter pill to swallow. In the span of just 2 months, Cavill had lost both his most iconic roles. Suddenly, that old label, the unluckiest man in Hollywood, didn't seem so far off, and things were only going to get messier. Later that month, an anonymous report began circulating online, accusing Cavill of being toxic during his time on The Witcher. The post claimed he was impossible for women to work with, deeply addicted to video games, and often distracted, late, and obsessive. It also alleged that he rewrote lines on the fly, displayed controlling behavior, and helped foster a boys' club atmosphere that made female writers feel pushed out. The story spread quickly across social media, giving the anonymous post an air of legitimacy and amplifying the controversy. Suddenly, Cavill's near-pristine reputation was under fire. One Reddit thread titled, "Maybe the Henry Cavill firing is a good thing," racked up hundreds of comments, many of them viciously critical. As is often the case online, users began resurfacing old moments to support support this new narrative. The top comment read, "Based on his comments about Me Too, this is unsurprising." That comment was a reference to something Cavill had said years earlier during a 2018 interview with GQ Australia at the height of the Me Too movement. When asked about dating and the new dynamics between men and women in Hollywood, Cavill responded, "There's something wonderful about a man chasing a woman. I think a woman should be wooed and chased, but maybe I'm old-fashioned for thinking that. It's very difficult to do that if there are certain rules in place, because then it's like, well, I don't want to go up and talk to her because then I'm going to be called a racist or something." The backlash was swift. Many felt Cavill had completely missed the point of the movement, painting himself as the real victim. Just days later, he issued a public apology. Having seen the reaction to an article, in particular about my feelings on dating and the Me Too movement, I just wanted to apologize for any confusion and misunderstanding that this may have created. Insensitivity was absolutely not my intention. At the time, the controversy faded quickly, but in 2022, as accusations swelled and Cavill's character came under question, people started looking at it differently, and the Me Too quote wasn't the only thing being dredged up. Other users began calling out a controversial relationship from Cavill's past. In 2015, Cavill made headlines when he began dating Tara King, a 19-year-old university student he'd met in a London nightclub. At the time, Henry was 32. The age gap raised eyebrows immediately, but Cavill defended the relationship in interviews, saying, "Tara allows me to be me and she doesn't have a problem with that. She treats me like a normal human being. She protects me and is protective of me when I'm having a hard time. She's there when I need looking after and the world is a little too heavy." The relationship only lasted a few months, but it garnered a lot of attention. Some fans found it harmless, while others felt the dynamic between a teenage student and a major Hollywood star was inappropriate. Now, years later, that brief romance was being re-examined under a harsher spotlight, with critics using it as further evidence that Cavill's clean-cut and gentlemanly image wasn't what it seemed. It didn't paint a flattering picture, but if you take a step back, the narrative starts to look very different. The accusations of misogyny from the Witcher set were completely anonymous and never substantiated. No names, no formal complaints, and no follow-up reporting from credible outlets. They may have reflected real frustrations behind the scenes, but without any evidence, they're just internet hearsay. The Me Too comment, while clumsy and ill-timed, came with a prompt and public apology. It read like a case of a celebrity being tone-deaf rather than malicious, and the age gap relationship, while uncomfortable to some, wasn't illegal or even particularly unusual in Hollywood. None of this makes Henry Cavill a villain, but it does show how quickly online narratives can shift and how even a couple of questionable moments can later be interpreted as signs of something nefarious. The fact is, the people who have publicly spoken about Cavill's character have always described him as polite, professional, and kind. One of those people was Steven Surgic, a director on season 2 and 3 of The Witcher, who worked with him every day on set.
He comes to set and he shakes everyone's hand. He goes around the entire room. And this is not a small operation we're doing. This is not a homemade movie. This is a movie where 800 people go through the lunch line. This is a big ass production. So when he shakes everyone's hand, I basically sit down because I'm going to be there for a little while. And he looks at everyone. He knows everyone's name. He knows how they're doing, what they do. And if there's someone like new there, he'll spot them and he'll say, "Who's that?" Or he'll go right up to them and introduce himself and say, "Hey, my name is Henry, what you doing?" And find out what they're doing there. He's amazing.
Steven wasn't alone. Cavill's castmates had similar, positive things to say about him. Creative disagreements with the writer's room is one thing. They happen on many sets. But when it comes to who Cavill is as a person, the consensus seems to be that he's a good guy. The year following all of this drama, Cavill didn't appear in any new movies. However, he returned to screens in 2024 with the film Argylle, a spy action comedy from director Matthew Vaughn. It had all the makings of a hit, a huge budget, a star-studded cast, and the promise of launching a new franchise. But when it finally dropped, Argylle was a critical and commercial flop. Reviews called it bloated, confusing, and painfully unfunny. Not even Cavill's infamous haircut could save it from bombing at the box office. Then came The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, a Guy Ritchie film based on real events. It performed better with critics, and Cavill's charisma was back on display, but it didn't exactly set the world on fire. There was no awards buzz or big box office splash. It was just a solid but forgettable action flick. Still, it's not all doom and gloom. Cavill's currently working on Enola Holmes 3, reprising his supporting recurring role as Sherlock. He's also developing Amazon's Warhammer 40,000 series, a project that perfectly blends his love of gaming and fantasy. Another Guy Ritchie film, In the Grey, is also on the way, and he's been linked to Marvel's upcoming Nova series, a reboot of Highlander, and Broadsword, a World War II drama with Tom Cruise. While the days of capes and swords might be behind him, Cavill still has a talent, fan base, and drive to carve out a new kind of career, one that might just surprise us all.